Have you ever eaten what you thought was a perfectly normal breakfast, and then, a few hours later, found yourself staring at the clock, waiting for that afternoon crash? Your energy disappears. Your concentration drops. You feel hungry again. And sometimes you may even wonder, why am I feeling this way when I just ate? Here is something most people never realize. The problem may not be what you eat at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It may have started with what you ate several hours earlier. And in this video, I'm going to show you a simple way to build meals that can support steadier blood sugar and more consistent energy throughout the day. But there's one part of this strategy that most people completely overlook. It has nothing to do with eliminating carbohydrates. It has nothing to do with starving yourself. And it certainly does not require expensive diabetic foods or supplements. It comes down to understanding what you put together on your plate and even the order in which you eat it. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll have a simple formula you can use at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and even when you're hungry between meals. And you can start using it with ordinary foods you probably already have at home. The afternoon crash starts earlier than you think. Let's start with something familiar. You wake up. You have breakfast. Maybe it's cereal. Maybe toast. Maybe a bagel. Maybe a sweet coffee and something quick because you're busy. At first, everything seems fine. You feel satisfied. You get on with your day. But then, around 2 or 3 o'clock, something changes. You feel tired. Your brain feels foggy. You start looking for something sweet. And suddenly, that snack you promised yourself you wouldn't eat starts looking very tempting. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. And this is especially important as we get older, because the way your body responds to food can change over time. But I want to make one thing very clear. This is not a personal failure. Your body is not broken. And you do not need to punish yourself with a restrictive diet. The goal is much simpler. You want to create meals that give your body a better combination of nutrients, so that glucose enters the bloodstream more gradually and you stay satisfied for longer. And this brings us to the first big idea. Stop thinking about food as one ingredient. One of the biggest mistakes people make is asking, is this food good or bad for blood sugar? That question is often too simple. A better question is, what am I eating this food with? Because the same carbohydrate can behave differently depending on the rest of the meal. Imagine eating a bowl of cereal by itself. Now imagine that meal differently. You add nuts. You add seeds. You add Greek yogurt. Suddenly, you are not just eating carbohydrates. You are combining carbohydrates with protein, fat, and fiber. And that combination can influence how quickly the meal is digested and how your blood glucose responds. This is one of the most useful concepts in this entire video. So remember this simple formula: protein, fiber, healthy fats, quality carbohydrates. You don't need every meal to be perfect. But building meals around this basic combination can make your food much more satisfying and can support steadier blood sugar. Now let's look at why. What actually happens after you eat? When you eat carbohydrates, your digestive system breaks them down into glucose. That glucose enters your bloodstream. Your body then uses insulin to help move glucose from the bloodstream into cells, where it can be used for energy. This is a normal and essential process. The problem is not that your body produces glucose. The problem is when meals are very quickly digested and your blood glucose rises rapidly. For example, a sugary drink, juice, refined bread, a sweet snack, or a highly processed carbohydrate eaten by itself. These foods can be digested relatively quickly. Compare that with a meal containing vegetables, beans, eggs, fish, whole grains, nuts, or seeds. Now you have more fiber, protein, and other nutrients that can slow digestion and increase satiety. And that difference matters. Not because carbohydrates are bad. They aren't. But because the quality, quantity, processing, and combination of your food matter. The first foods to build around. So what should you actually eat? Let's make this practical. Number 1, eggs. Eggs provide protein and fat, and they can be an excellent foundation for breakfast. Instead of eating toast by itself, Try eggs with whole grain toast and some vegetables or berries. Same breakfast occasion. Completely different structure. Number 2, fish. Salmon, mackerel, and other fish provide protein and, depending on the type, beneficial fats. You can pair fish with vegetables and a reasonable portion of whole grains or another high-fiber carbohydrate. You don't need complicated recipes. The principle is what matters. Number 3, beans and lentils. These are especially useful because they naturally combine protein and fiber. Think chickpeas, lentils, black beans, kidney beans. They can make meals more filling while providing carbohydrates that are generally digested more slowly than highly refined alternatives. And here's something important. You don't need to completely remove carbohydrates. You need to become more selective about which carbohydrates you choose and what you eat with them. Number 4, Greek yogurt. Choose a version with little or no added sugar and pair it with foods such as berries, nuts, or seeds. Now you've created a snack or breakfast with protein, fiber, and healthy fats. Compare that with eating a sweetened snack completely by itself. The difference is not simply the number of calories. It's the overall composition of the meal. Number 5, nuts and seeds. Almonds, walnuts, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds. These foods provide combinations of protein, fat, fiber, and other nutrients. But there is one important detail. Healthy does not mean unlimited. Nuts and seeds are energy-dense, so portions still matter. A small handful can be very different from repeatedly grabbing handful after handful throughout the day. The fruit mistake. Now let's talk about fruit, because this is where a lot of people get confused. You may have heard that fruit is bad for blood sugar. That is far too simplistic. Whole fruit comes with fiber, water, vitamins, minerals, and other beneficial compounds. Berries are particularly useful because they tend to be relatively lower in sugar and provide fiber. Blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, blackberries. These can be excellent additions to a balanced meal. But there is an important distinction. Whole fruit is not the same thing as fruit juice. When fruit is turned into juice, much of the physical structure and fiber is removed, while the sugars become much easier to consume quickly. Think about it. Eating one whole orange takes time. Drinking a large glass of orange juice can happen in seconds. That difference matters. So instead of fearing fruit, change the form in which you consume it. The simple plate formula. Now, let's turn all of this information into something you can actually remember. Imagine your dinner plate. Start with vegetables. Aim to make them the largest part of the plate. Then add a source of protein. Eggs, fish, chicken, beans, Greek yogurt, depending on the meal. Then add a reasonable portion of a high-fiber carbohydrate, such as whole grains or starchy vegetables. Finally, include a source of healthy fat when appropriate. That's it. You don't need a complicated calculator. You don't need to weigh every leaf of lettuce. You don't need to spend hundreds of dollars on special foods. You are simply creating a more balanced meal. And there's another trick that makes this even more interesting. The order of your food may matter. Here's something many people never think about. You don't necessarily have to eat every part of your meal in the same order. Some research suggests that eating non-starchy vegetables and protein before carbohydrate-rich foods can produce a more favorable post-meal glucose response than eating carbohydrates first. So try this. Start with a few bites of vegetables or salad. Then eat some of your protein. Then move on to your whole grains or other carbohydrate-rich foods. It's a tiny behavioral change. You haven't removed anything from your plate. You simply change the sequence. And sometimes the easiest health habit is the one that doesn't require you to buy anything at all. Your breakfast may be the biggest opportunity. Now, let's come back to that afternoon crash. Because breakfast is where many people accidentally set themselves up for a difficult morning. A bowl of sugary cereal by itself. A bagel by itself. Toast with a sweet spread. A pastry and coffee. These meals may be convenient, but they are often heavily centered around refined carbohydrates and may not provide enough protein or fiber to keep you satisfied. So, instead, think about combinations. Eggs with whole grain toast and berries. oatmeal with nuts, seeds, and plain Greek yogurt. A smoothie built around protein, vegetables, and a source of healthy fat rather than just fruit juice and sweeteners. The goal isn't to create a perfect breakfast. The goal is to stop thinking of breakfast as carbohydrates first and everything else later. Build the meal together. And don't forget your snacks. This same principle works between meals. An apple by itself can be fine. But if you're constantly hungry soon afterward, try pairing it with a small amount of nut butter. Instead of crackers alone, pair them with a protein source. Instead of a sugary snack, try berries with nuts or plain Greek yogurt. Instead of reaching for a granola bar because the package says healthy. Look at the nutrition label. How much added sugar is there? How much protein? How much fiber? What are the actual ingredients? Because a health halo on the front of the package doesn't automatically make the food a good choice. The healthy foods that can fool you. This is one of the easiest traps to fall into. Granola can sound healthy. Some flavored yogurts sound healthy. Some cereal bars sound healthy. But marketing isn't nutrition science. Turn the package around. Read the label. Look beyond words like natural, light, fitness, healthy, whole grain. The ingredients and nutrition facts tell you much more. And remember, you don't need to fear every packaged food. You simply need to become better at recognizing what you're actually eating. 3 things that can work against you. Now, let's make this even easier. If your goal is steadier blood sugar and energy, watch out for 3 common patterns. First, eating carbohydrates completely by themselves. Toast alone, crackers alone, juice alone, a sweet snack alone. Instead, whenever appropriate, combine carbohydrates with protein, fiber, or healthy fats. Second, ignoring portion size. Even nutritious foods can contribute a lot of calories when portions become very large. This is particularly easy with nuts, oils, and calorie-dense foods. Healthy doesn't mean unlimited. Third, focusing only on food. This one surprises people. Your lifestyle matters too. Sleep matters. Stress matters. Movement matters. And one of the simplest things you can do after a meal is walk. You don't need an intense workout. Even a short period of gentle movement can help your muscles use glucose. So after dinner, instead of immediately sitting down for the rest of the evening, consider taking a short walk. 10 minutes. That's it. Small habits can be surprisingly powerful when you repeat them. Don't fall for the all or nothing trap. Now here's a psychological mistake that can destroy more healthy habits than any dessert ever could. You eat something you didn't plan to eat. Maybe you have a slice of cake, and then you think, well, I've already ruined today. I'll start again tomorrow. And suddenly one dessert becomes an entire day of overeating. Don't do that. One meal doesn't determine your health. One dessert doesn't erase your progress. The next meal is another opportunity. This is why consistency is more important than perfection. If you make one less than ideal choice, don't turn it into 10. Just return to your normal routine at the next meal. You don't need to change everything tomorrow. This is where I want you to take some pressure off yourself. Don't try to completely redesign your diet overnight. Instead, choose one meal, breakfast. For the next several days, focus on building a breakfast around protein, fiber, and a reasonable amount of quality carbohydrate. Then add the same principle to lunch. Then dinner. Then snacks. One habit. Then another. That's much more sustainable than trying to become a completely different person tomorrow morning. Your simple blood sugar checklist. So let's make this incredibly easy to remember. Before you eat, ask yourself 4 questions. Where is my protein? Where is my fiber? Where is my healthy fat, when appropriate? Is my carbohydrate source mostly whole or minimally processed? If you can answer those questions most of the time, you're already thinking about your meals in a much more useful way. And remember the other simple strategy. Vegetables and protein first, carbohydrate-rich foods later. Then move your body after meals when you can. Stay hydrated. Get adequate sleep. And don't obsess over perfection. One more important thing. Everyone responds to food somewhat differently. Your body isn't identical to your neighbor's body. Your activity level is different. Your sleep may be different. Your medications may be different. Your health history may be different. So don't assume that something that works for one person will produce exactly the same response for you. And if you have diabetes, take glucose-lowering medication, or have another medical condition affecting blood sugar, talk with your healthcare professional before making major dietary changes. The goal isn't to replace medical care. The goal is to make everyday food choices more supportive of your health. The real goal. And now I want you to think about something. Imagine it's 4 weeks from today. You wake up. You eat a breakfast that actually keeps you satisfied. You don't spend the entire morning thinking about your next snack. Lunch feels balanced. You take a short walk after a meal. And when 3 o'clock arrives, instead of automatically reaching for something sweet, you feel more steady, more focused, more in control of your choices. That's the real goal. Not perfection, not starvation, not cutting out every carbohydrate you enjoy. Just learning how to work with your body instead of constantly fighting it. Because healthy eating shouldn't feel like punishment. It should feel sustainable. It should taste good. And it should fit into your real life. Your first step starts tomorrow. So don't try to remember everything from this video. Just remember this. At your next meal, don't eat the carbohydrate alone. Add protein. Add fiber. Add healthy fats when appropriate. And if you can, start with your vegetables and protein before moving on to your carbohydrate-rich foods. That's your first step. Then repeat it tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Small decisions, repeated consistently, can create a very different pattern over time. And if you're over 45 and you've noticed that your energy, appetite, or weight seems harder to manage than it used to, don't automatically blame yourself. Your body changes. Your needs change. And your strategy can change too. You don't need to be perfect. You simply need to start making better decisions more consistently. If this video gave you one practical idea you can actually use, subscribe to the channel. And before you leave, tell me one thing in the comments. What is the one meal you want to improve first? Breakfast, lunch, dinner, or snacks? Because sometimes the biggest change doesn't begin with changing your entire diet. It begins with changing one meal, and then doing it again tomorrow. I'll see you in the next video.